This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 172. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. In today's show, Jon Moxley gets accused by Ric Flair of doing what and getting him arrested, as well as Chris Jericho filing for some interesting trademarks. We're going to get into all of that. Of course, we're going to review the Elimination Chamber and go over the biggest topics and trends in wrestling. But doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
We love wrestling so much. Adam couldn't even wait to get home to the studio. He's driving home from a good day's work on his day's effort, and he's like, look, man, I want to talk wrestling so bad. I have to review the Elimination Chamber. I have to review AEW. Oh, man. I have to review AJ Styles and the performance that he gave on Monday Night Raw. Riddle doing his thing. So much good shit going on. It's unbelievable what's going on in the world of wrestling. I enjoyed it. I thought Elimination Chamber was a decent watch, but some people maybe aren't viewing it that way based on the results.
Now, you do realize we did do this one time before. I think it was roughly a year, probably closer to 18 months ago we did it this way. But no, you're right. Elimination Chamber. I thought Elimination Chamber was decent. I mean, this is one of those middle pay-per-views. It's kind of sandwiched between a really big show, and then there's a little squeaker with Fastlane that's coming up next, and then you've got the woolly mammoth of them all in WrestleMania. And this is supposed to lay all of that groundwork, right? So you have Royal Rumble, which sets the stage for what's going to happen at WrestleMania. But this one is supposed to really help solidify and lay all that groundwork, and I think that's what it did. I think it did its job. I don't think it was necessarily a fantastic show, but I thought it did its job. And look, something unexpected happened. Daniel Bryan ends up winning the Elimination Chamber. Neither one of us thought that was going to happen. We both thought Kevin Owens was going to win that. He ends up winning via pinfall. He would then later go on to face Roman Reigns in the Elimination Chamber. Something we expected. Roman Reigns won. So nothing brand new there. Elevate a guy like Daniel Bryan, who's been taking quite a few losses on SmackDown, comes away with a monster victory, only to end up losing to Roman Reigns, which then sets up what we will discuss a little bit later on in the program with who's going to challenge him at WrestleMania. Now, like I mentioned before, Roman Reigns ends up defeating Daniel Bryan. Matt Riddle ends up defeating John Morrison. Now, Keith Lee gets pulled from this match. I was a little bit surprised by that. Keith Lee ended up getting pulled from this match on Sunday afternoon. So Matt Riddle ends up defeating John Morrison via pinfall, as well as Bobby Lashley, to win the U.S. title. How surprised were you that Keith Lee was removed from this match?
I was shocked. I was disappointed. I was like, oh, I mean, Morrison, I guess, sets it up where, you can take the belt off of Lashley and move him to where, obviously, he was going to end up going. But in the end, it kind of cheapens it a little bit, because I think if you have Keith Lee involved in the match and you want to elevate Riddle, you have Riddle pin Keith Lee. That would have been awesome. Mm-hmm. But they further storyline, or whatever the reasons were that Keith Lee was not involved. It was quite disappointing at the highest level. But Bobby Lashley still comes away looking like a monster. He's now going to be, has the rocket ship strapped to him. And Riddle, I think it's good. I think it's a great first belt for Matt Riddle to kick off his WWE career. But did you see the controversy? I mean, my God, Deadspin came back with a roar and is like, oh, my God, they put the belt on Matt Riddle. Did you hear all his allegations in the past and things like that? Mm-hmm. They absolutely opened themselves up. And you know what? Knowing that was the case, I might have waited until maybe after WrestleMania, until the news cycle died down a little bit. He got some negative pub for winning the belt. That was crazy.
Vince doesn't care, though. Vince is going to do whatever Vince wants. And you know what? Vince looks at publication as negative publication is just as good as good publication, so we'll roll with it. Hey, look, all those things happened with Matt Riddle. He wasn't full for many shows when those things happened. It's one of those things where I think it's a non-factor in WWE. They just don't care. Now, I find this would be a little bit interesting, though. Bobby Lashley, the holder of the U.S. title. We always talk about how we need the Intercontinental belt and the U.S. belt to be these gateway belts, right? The holder needs to be essentially the next in line to challenge for the World Championship. And that's what you're getting here. Bobby Lashley did his time as the U.S. champ. And now he's going to get the transition and go after The Miz, which, spoiler alert right there, we'll talk about that in a few minutes here. Go after The Miz to get the WWE Championship. And I think that's a good utilization of that belt, and I think that's a good way to utilize Bobby Lashley. I mean, we'll talk about it when we get to Raw, but you could make the argument Bobby Lashley deserves to be the champion over just about anybody else right now. So I do want to put a little bit of a pin in that, but transitioning on to what came next, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler end up defeating Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks via pinfall to retain their titles. Not really surprised, but a little bit shocked because both Belair and Banks, I think, are fantastic. I do see both of them challenging each other at WrestleMania. So, again, no big booking mystery there. Now, something you might have a problem with. Drew McIntyre ends up winning the Elimination Chamber to retain his title. All right, it was a really good match. He gets decimated by Bobby Lashley, who comes back out and just tears him a new one, only to have The Miz come back out, cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase, pin Drew McIntyre, and he is now your new WWE champion. I don't have a problem with this. I think this is fine. Look, you had to get the Money in the Bank briefcase off of Miz at some point. Doing it against Drew McIntyre, does that suck a little bit? Yeah, but you're not taking it off of Roman Reigns. The company's invested way too much in Reigns. Is it bad for Drew that he didn't really get to win his belt in front of a crowd? Yeah, it kind of sucks. But you know what? Everything's looking like it's starting to reopen a little bit. I could see Drew McIntyre going away for a little bit as the champion and then coming back and winning the whole damn thing, whether it be from Bobby Lashley or whether it be from Miz or whomever else will hold that belt. I was happy for the Miz. Look, Miz is fantastic, right? He's a great heel. He's a really good face. The guy is essentially winning at life. Has a hot wife, has a couple of kids. He hosts his own television shows. He's a movie star. The guy is a great face for WWE. Most believable champion? I will never make that argument. But I think he's a great face for WWE.
But
How excited were you for The Miz?
Yeah, I was excited, but if it's going to go down where he's the transitional champ, I need him to have a good 5-month run.
Right.
If he's going to end up dropping the belt quickly to Bobby Lashley, it cheapens it because they did the exact same thing to him when he first won it. He earned the belt. He earned the cash-in. He has an opportunity to continue to elevate his brand. And I think he looks good with the belt. I think that he's a worthy champion. It's fine. There's no real issue there. But I'm disappointed if it's going to be a situation where you just feed The Miz to Bobby Lashley. That would suck.
Mm-hmm. And I want to come back to that because I have a feeling that might be the case. Now, when we look at the predictions, the whole thing with Keith Lee really kind of screwed everything up. I find it difficult to hold Keith Lee not being in that match against you. So we'll end up just splitting the point here. It'll be 2-2. We ended up splitting on basically everything else. The Keith Lee, Matt Riddle, Bobby Lashley match was the one match that really separated us in the picks. Now, you had Keith Lee, I had Riddle. Again, I can't hold it against you that Keith Lee was pulled from that match. So we'll end up splitting that point.
That's the way it always goes. If the guy's not in it, there's no match.
Yep.
It was a whole different match. So it was good. It was still a good pay-per-view. I think we got a lot right. We got a lot more right than we even originally thought. But, hey.
For sure.
Yep, let's transition over to SmackDown, and we finally got the decision. It's going to be Edge challenging Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. And I guess, there's going to be a nice stipulation added to this one, potentially. What kind of match, I'm curious to see, what kind of match should these two kind of get involved in?
Now, this is going to be interesting. Now, I think Roman Reigns will force a stipulation onto this match. And I think it'll be something that benefits him. This is the way he's been playing his character now for the last couple of weeks. It's what he's done with Kevin Owens. I think this match needs to have a last man standing, or I would love to see. I brought this up last week. I would love to see a buried alive match. Now I know that's the Undertaker's gimmick, but I would love to see something like that. He talks about how he's the big dog. Roman Reigns is always saying, "I'm the big dog. This is my yard." So beat the living piss out of Edge and show everybody that this is your yard, that you are the big dog, that you are everything you claim to be. I'd love to see them go blow for blow, and I'd love to see them take each other out with a very physical last man standing or buried alive match.
No, let's keep
What
it
about
simple.
you?
I think keep it simple. Cage match.
Ooh.
Just have the nice steel cage at WrestleMania, and you can have a bunch of memories that can be created. Yeah, these two are going to have a great match, but I'm not exactly sure. And I think maybe as we get closer, maybe we'll tease it. I'm not exactly sure just yet who deserves to go over, because Reigns winning would elevate him. He fights on and takes on a legend. I think that actually elevates him more.
Mm-hmm.
Edge winning the title would be a great redemption story and set up a bunch of further matches. But, Edge is right now in a situation in which he's a little bit older. He's not going to be the best fighting champion, but you could elevate the brand more by having the belt be fought every 2 months instead of regularly. But I think you and I probably are in the same boat with what we think a champion should be. Should be a fighting champion. But as the weeks progress, we'll talk about it, and we'll see how it goes. Anything else on SmackDown catch your attention?
No, it's going to be, I think going forward, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Sasha Banks and Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. I think that's going to be an interesting build as we get closer to WrestleMania, and we should probably keep an eye out on that. I think Raw, coming off of the Elimination Chamber, had some of the more interesting story arcs that kind of came out of it. And the one that we've kind of already highlighted and talked about is Miz being champion, possibly being a transitional champion, and Bobby Lashley challenging him next week. Do you think Bobby Lashley takes this belt off of Miz? You've already said you want at least a 5-month run from him, but could you see the case being made that Bobby Lashley deserves to be the champion and could be going into WrestleMania?
Well, first of all, I thought the Miz's celebration was great up until the point where they decided to include Bobby Lashley. I thought the Miz's speech was well done, well executed. It was celebratory. And then the whole, you got an hour to decide, I thought that it made the Miz look weak. And I thought that, okay, you could have just did what they did, but a week later. All you needed to do after the Elimination Chamber is have the Miz run a celebration, and boom, you just let him walk off the show and let him be the champ for 1 day. 1 week you can't give the Miz. Instead, you rush right into the next angle, and then you finish the show with the Miz getting destroyed by Lashley. I thought that it was just done in a way that's like, okay, we want to elevate Bobby Lashley and make him look like a beast, and we want to make the Miz look like a punk. And I thought it was silly because he's a great champion. I think the whole gimmick that the Miz does is annoying, but it comes across when it's across from Bobby Lashley, it comes across as weak.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is one of those things where you had WWE creative really trying to put together a story to package it all up. So this way we can kind of move into whatever this next arc is going to be, so we can get everything tied up neatly for WrestleMania with a bow. And it feels rushed. Now, I think Bobby Lashley, when it's all said and done, could and probably will be the WWE champion. It's unfortunate for Miz. Him being a transitional champion, I think, sucks. But I think you have more that you can do with Bobby Lashley. I could see a storyline where Bobby Lashley beats Miz. You go to WrestleMania. Actually, you'll probably end up going to Fastlane, where Miz will challenge Bobby Lashley to get his belt back. Bobby Lashley retains. This then opens up the door for Drew McIntyre to take on Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. It'll give Bobby Lashley the belt for approximately a month and a half. At that point, WWE will kind of decide what they want to do. You know, Bobby Lashley's really getting over. They might keep it on him. Otherwise, they will transition and give it back to Drew McIntyre. So I think you have more options with storylines if you put the belt on Bobby Lashley. Now, the last couple of weeks, something's become very, very apparent. And this is a new NXT call-up. And I think he is now Vince McMahon's new toy, which is a very dangerous game to play. Because when Vince falls in love with you, you get a rocket strapped to your back. The moment Vince falls out of love with you, you are buried beneath 18 layers of quicksand, and good luck trying to figure your way out. You can look no further than a guy like Aleister Black or a guy like Andrade. But I think Damian Priest is Vince McMahon's new toy. I think he's in love with this guy. I think he's got the look. I think he's got the power. I think he has the build. I think he's got a little bit of that charisma. I think Damian Priest is Vince McMahon's new obsession object. And you can see it. He's getting paired with a guy like Bad Bunny. Again, Bad Bunny is a guy that neither one of us really wanted to see. He's now your 24/7 champion. You see these guys back and forth all the time together. Bad Bunny's constantly getting spotlighted. You've got Damian Priest getting spotlighted with him. Both these guys are basically getting the rub off of each other. I think it's a dangerous game for a very young wrestler like Damian Priest. And when I say young, I mean, look, I understand that he wrestled in ROH for years. I understand he has a fantastic indie career. I used to watch a lot of his matches in ROH, actually. But he's very new to the Raw roster. He's very young to that Raw roster. He's going to have to find something that's going to help keep him in that spotlight so he does not get discarded like a used condom, because Vince McMahon goes through these guys like they're Trojans at a gangbang. So I'm not sure how you feel about Damian Priest, but I see a lot of really good there, but I'm also nervous for the guy.
I like his involvement. I think that, him protecting Bad Bunny was a great way. I think he's got a look. He's unique. Yeah, it might not bode well, but I think that it's going to be up to Damian Priest to hold his own. And the greats, when they're given the rocket ship, they do something with it. And let's hope it sticks and he's able to shine and doesn't get buried by the company.
Yeah. Now, you brought up AJ Styles when we were opening the show. You were really impressed by what you've seen coming out of AJ Styles this week, eh?
Look, I like the angle that he's got with this bodyguard, dude. The bodyguard flinging people around is sweet. And eventually speaking, AJ Styles probably has to find a direction, but I thought it was great. AJ Styles, I think that his new contract has allowed him, to shine, because I think for an older wrestler, had he been going through the house show circuit and wrestling 5 times a week, kind of the deal now without having fans and the limited house shows, you see that he's bringing it match after match. And I think this is what needs to happen when wrestlers turn like 38. They go hard, do the circuit. Once you turn 37, 38, slow it down and ask the company, look, let me just work the TV shows and the big pay-per-views, and I think you can get another 10 years out of your career if you wrestle less. And AJ Styles, I think, is getting the great opportunity now to show a young whippersnapper like Ricochet, hey, you step foot in this ring and you mess around, you're about to get body slammed by my guy. And I think Ricochet is benefiting. Everybody benefits when they're in the ring with AJ Styles. So I just think that kudos to him, I think, for bringing it, because it's fascinating in that he's already been around for 5 years. This is going on 5 years in, going into year 6. And he's now a staple and a big-time player. And I just think that Ricochet is now the beneficiary of getting to work with AJ Styles.
Yeah, I think you're right. Here's the thing. Ricochet was another guy who was basically a brand new toy of Vince. Then he got used, abused, and discarded. And now you put him in a match with AJ Styles, and it was a fantastic match. AJ Styles in that one match doing more for 2 wrestlers who are at different points in their career than just about anybody else. So AJ Styles is a great hand to have in the business and to have with WWE. I want to transition over to NXT, and something became very apparent to me this week with NXT show. NXT does a fantastic job of pivoting and working in new talent. So with what's just recently happened, NXT has lost their mainstay from the women in Rhea Ripley. She's gone up. They've recently lost Keith Lee. Matt Riddle got called up. I think at some point you're going to see Tommaso Ciampa get called up. You have this exodus of these really talented. Damian Priest just got called up. You have these exodus of these really talented wrestlers that NXT does a fantastic job building storylines around. And what happens is when Vince wants them, or when they deem that they're ready, they get shot up to the main roster. And NXT has to find a way to then pivot and create brand new stars. And I think they do a better job of this than just about anybody in the business, whether it be AEW, whether it be New Japan, whether it be Impact or the red or blue brand for WWE. You have a wrestler in back-to-back weeks in Zoe Starks who
really, I have no idea who she is, but she put on a fantastic show with Io Shirai this week. You've got a guy like Tyler Russ who is, I don't think he's great, but he's interesting. There's something there. He's always on, whether his matches are actually happening or not. He's just on TV, so they're getting him screen time, which is introducing him to the audience. And then you've got a guy like Leon Ruff who won the North American Championship not too long ago, held his own in a match against a guy like Damian Priest and a guy like Johnny Gargano. So I think NXT does a supreme job of bringing in new talent, working them in, showing them off, and really helping accentuate what they do. And I don't think there's any question that both Raw and SmackDown should really be taking notes from NXT. Would you not agree?
Yeah, NXT is a show that's probably arguably better than Raw. You got better wrestlers, better angles, better delivery. And then I think what's great is you got, I think, a lot more forces that are interested. You got Pat McAfee basically tweeting, I told you so. I told you guys that Adam Cole was a bad guy. And his influence makes it really interesting. And I think that, the matches are great. And I think that, the final bullet being put in the Undisputed Era, Karrion Kross and Santos Escobar, they're doing great stuff all the way around. And they just are able to really put on entertaining shows, even though obviously, most people, I think at this point, watch AEW and then they turn on NXT. I still think NXT does a great job.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what I do. I'm going to tune into AEW and then I will watch NXT basically from DVR. But I think you brought up two really quality segments on NXT there. I thought the match with Karrion Kross and Santos Escobar was fantastic. I thought Escobar came out looking extremely strong, going blow for blow with Karrion Kross. Yes, it was at times 3-on-1, but I thought he came out looking extremely strong while Karrion Kross gets the win and looks incredible. And I think the big talking point coming out of it is Adam Cole has finished Undisputed Era. If you go to Adam Cole's Twitter, he says that he is the Undisputed Era. So look, turns on Roderick Strong, basically low blows him, rips his Undisputed Era necklace off of him. You're seeing this vicious turn from Adam Cole, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's interesting. I think NXT put on, out of all of the wrestling that we watched, I think NXT this week was probably the best. And we're going to get into AEW in a minute. I want to get your Impact recap real quick, if you want to go through that, and we can jump into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, Impact has recognized and given legitimacy to Moose and his TNA World Championship. And after a year of basically him having this belt and toting it around, Scott D'Amore and the company just said, screw it. Let's just make it a legitimate belt, and your new TNA World Champion is the old TNA World Champion, but now it's legitimate. It's Moose. And they highlighted him, and I thought it was great. I thought that the opening of the show was good. It was a good show all the way around, and it's starting to highlight future feuds, because if you have one champion and you have the other champion, the Impact World Champion, and it's Rich Swann, you kind of know where it's going. So the show opens with a tables match, Diener taking on Jake Something. I thought Jake Something getting the victory was great, and it was a very, very cleverly wrestled tables match with a lot of fun spots that was going to go back and forth. You didn't exactly know what was going to happen, so it was a very, very good and entertaining start to the show. Now, while I think that people will wonder why there's going to be like two world titles outside of the X Division championship, they don't really have their U.S. title or TV title. They just got the X Division championship and the world title. So giving it to Moose and legitimizing it, it's fine. I know some people online didn't like it, but I had no problem with it. Later on, you had the Good Brothers taking on Triple XL, and the Good Brothers go over, and I think it was an average match, and it was kind of basically a squash match. But in that regard, I just think that anytime the Good Brothers are out there, they're great. And Triple XL, they're interesting, but I think maybe they deserved a little bit better in this go around. You had Susan and Kimberly taking on Jordynne Grace and Jazz, with Jordynne Grace and Jazz going over. And then you had the TNA World Championship match in the main event. You got Jake something taking on Moose. And obviously you knew Moose was going to get over, but Jake something's done some good things. And now we're starting to see and what this needs to be built around, which is absolutely fabulous. Rich Swann hit the ring to save Jake something after Moose attacked him with a chair. Security got in the mix, and what's going to probably take place. And, here it is. Scott D'Amore takes to the ring after the kerfuffle of everything taking place. It's going to be the long-awaited title match between Swann and Moose at Sacrifice on Impact Plus. And I think it's going to take place March 13th, and the months of teasing it have been there. So we're just a couple weeks away from, I think, the payoff of what everybody wants to see. Moose and Rich Swann. And so in that light, it's an A- show because you're moving toward the angle that people want to see, champion versus champion. And now we have the impact point of what we need to see going forward. And in the coming weeks, we'll discuss who's the best candidate to go over because I think both, obviously, in this situation, deserve an opportunity. But hey, for wrestling fans, Moose taking on Rich Swann has the opportunity to be a classic. So we'll hype it up and give it the respect it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, and this was a match that's been building for, like you said, quite some time. It's the one that everybody's really been waiting for. It seems like it's almost a no-brainer. So fantastic on Impact, doing some really, really good work. Hopefully in the coming weeks, we'll have an exclusive interview for you right here on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Show with a wrestler from Impact. So we're working on getting that set up here. I'm looking at my email quickly. It looks like he's responded to the request. So we'll see what happens, and we'll try to get that put together for everybody. But now transitioning over to AEW. For me, this really felt like it was a ho-hum show. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was great, though. I thought this was, I don't want to say it was average, but I don't think by any stretch of the imagination this was what we necessarily expected we were going to get, especially with the announcement that you were going to get Paul Wright, a.k.a. The Big Show, who's recently signed with AEW. And I have a little bit of intel on why that happened. I don't think it's really any big surprise to anybody. It's not like it's going to be earth-shattering or groundbreaking. But Big Show signs with AEW, and they seem to, through all of their social media, they seem to promise that he was going to show up on this show, which he never did. They made reference to him, and they said that he will be there next week, but not this week. So a little bit interesting there. I don't know. I thought it was a good show. I don't think it was a great show. What was your take on AEW this week?
Well, it wasn't a big show. Absolutely. It was a show kind
well
of.
Well done.
It was a medium show. It wasn't exactly. But look, Sting got his comeuppance. He got to go over to see him do a move and to get over was fine. I liked the Young Bucks promo. I thought it kind of hit home. And kind of, I like the new edgier kind of look to it, maybe moving away from that super kick party kind of thing. Them being a little bit more edgy was, I thought, excellent. Yeah, I could see where you might not have thought this was the best of shows based on the way they have. But look, you can't just hit a home run every time. So this time, yeah, they'll take a 6 out of 10, whereas they've been consistently getting 8s.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I totally understand that. And for me, it wasn't even so much that it was, it wasn't like it was a single. This was a solid double, maybe a weak triple. It wasn't like it was a horrid show. Yeah. It was just one of those shows where, I don't know, they do a fantastic job every single week of giving us fantastic programming. And this just seemed like it was another one of those transitional shows, going to get us to next week, going to get us into the pay-per-view. They have a go-home show coming up next week. So this was just one of those shows where I think it's just kind of bridging that gap. And look, I don't have a problem with it. It just out of all the shows that we always get from AEW, normally they're right there giving us a 7.5 or better. This one, like you said, probably closer to a 6. It was good. It wasn't bad. It was what it was. What did you think about Sting doing his Scorpion Death Drop? Because I marked out for sure.
Yeah, it was cool.
Pretty pumped.
I like his working relationship with Darby Allin. I think it's great, and I'm really impressed. I actually liked the Jake Hagar Brandon Cutler match. I thought it was good, and it was okay for what it was. Cutler did some of his tricks, and then Hager mauled him, and that's the way kind of it should have been played. Team Taz defeating the Varsity Blondes was cool, and I can't wait to see the evolution of Brian Pillman Jr. as he gets his career off the ground further in AEW. And then Jon Moxley defeating Ryan Nemeth was fine. I thought it was a great match, and I can't wait to see the further development of this feud between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega, man, and just to think that in the coming weeks we're going to see an exploding barbed wire death match at the Revolution pay-per-view on March 7th. It's coming up close. It might be one of those must-see matches of 2021.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this is going to be interesting. That's for damn sure. The cutaway to Kenny Omega in you want to call it like a steel mill or a workshop, just pounding away on items of destruction. I thought that was a nice little interesting tidbit. I thought it was a nice little build for this match. And again, we have the go home show next week, so it'll be really interesting to kind of see what we get from that. Look, we've had a ton of fantastic programming from AEW recently. This show, not as high as it has been, but I think there's one guy who has been ever so solid for the last couple of weeks, and he's been putting on some of the best work, and his matches have been absolutely incredible, and he is a high flyer. He's none other than Rey Fenix. I think Rey Fenix has been carrying parts of AEW with some of his matches and some of his wrestling ability. Like, he is absolutely insane. He had a fantastic match against Lance Archer on Wednesday night. And it was one of those matches where going into it, I was like, I really don't know who's going to win this. Physically, you think Lance Archer's going to win this. But then you see some of these moves that Rey Fenix does, and your head just explodes. Because nobody should be able to contort their body the way they do, or the way he does. And nobody should be able to fly through the air like he does. I think Rey Fenix is a guy who is an unsung hero for AEW right now. I think he's been doing some fantastic work. Would you not agree?
Yeah, props to Rey Fenix, man. Basically what you're saying is you're giving him credit and acknowledging his great work rate. And what that means is that he does great moves. His chemistry in the ring is great. His psychology, his selling, I think he's starting to put it all together and continuing to thrive in a company that gives him the opportunity. And that's why we all love AEW, is that a guy like Rey Fenix, who's been established, done some great things, now we get to see it on a more regular basis. And he's taken even the next step. So kudos to Rey Fenix for standing out, and Jock definitely noticed. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So in a recent interview, Jon Moxley says Ric Flair blamed him for getting him arrested at an airport. Moxley said, getting drunk with Ric Flair. He gets arrested at the airport, and he's walking around telling people, I got him arrested at the airport. I'm like, okay, Rick, I wasn't twisting your arm to throw down double Bloody Marys at 2:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'm hanging out with Ric Flair. This is crazy. What kind of life am I living? Moxley went on to say, Moxley didn't go on to say where the incident took place, but there was a report from back in 2016 that Ric Flair was detained in the Boston Logan International Airport. So trying to connect some dots there, that might have been the incident or the situation. Now, Chris Jericho recently filed for some old trademarks of his. During his time in Mexico, he would use Corazon de Leon. This roughly translates to Lionheart in English. If you remember, that is a name that he also used with his time in Japan, as well as ECW. He was also referred to as the Lionheart on WCW. So on February 18th, Jericho filed for those trademarks. And we finally have an update on Samoa Joe and his return to the ring. Currently, there isn't a timetable set. WWE medical staff is keeping him sidelined for health concerns. It was reported last year that Samoa Joe had been taken off TV after suffering 2 concussions in less than a month. Joe hasn't wrestled since February of 2020. So at this moment in time, WWE and the medical staff are keeping Samoa Joe basically safe from himself and preventing him from wrestling at this time until, I'm assuming, look, I don't know if you've ever had a concussion. I've had a couple in my life. I'm assuming he's dealing with some post-concussion syndromes where he's having those headaches and the lights are bothering him. So there's no need to put him out there. He does a fantastic job on commentary. If he doesn't ever get back in a ring, him being on commentary, I think is a total nod in the right direction. Not as good as Jericho. I think we both agree Chris Jericho is fantastic on commentary, but Samoa Joe adds quite a bit to the party when he's on commentary. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes, my friend.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Now, did you give the quick update on Paul White and how he got his deal?
Oh, no, I did not. So, not 100% sure how he got his deal, but I understand what went into him getting his deal. And I apologize for kind of skipping over that. Basically, he was just upset with WWE as well as their creative. Like,
put out the pasture.
He feels like he has more to give, and he's tired of just kind of showing up for these one-off shows. He's tired of having a constant flip-flop for his character, whether it be a heel or whether he be a face. And really and truly, he feels like he has more to give. And it sounds like AEW is going to utilize him in such a way where he will not just be in the ring, he's also going to do some commentary work. And I think that's fantastic for a guy. This was a guy who, you know what, basically said, Vince, you don't see anything in me? That's fine. I'm going to go to the competition. They're going to pay me, and I'm going to go do work. And I think that is, again, that's another great hand to have in a locker room. That's another guy who, not just from a physical standpoint, brings it, but that is another guy who mentally understands the mental aspect of telling a story in the ring. On top of it, it sounds like Tony Khan is going to make a run at a couple of other WWE superstars. So don't be surprised if in the coming months you see a few other guys jump ship, because a lot of people in WWE aren't real happy.
Exactly. And so it was like Paul White, 49 years old. You can still get 3-4 matches out of him a year instead of opposed to the one where he was working with the lowest of the low. So absolutely great signing all the way around. And you know what else is great? The Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, when you go and you type in Detroit Sports Podcast, you hit the subscribe button, our daily content will find you. And we greatly appreciate all the support over the years. Again, make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Message anytime if you've liked or disliked any of our takes in the world of professional wrestling. I can't wait to watch again this week. Some go-home shows. We get the chance to see how Miz and Bobby Lashley are going to progress, and we're going to continue to see a bunch of great wrestling. And so make sure you stick and stay. Make sure you subscribe so that next week you can download the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.